CLR Bruce Rivers. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, man. Excited to be doing this. We get to break it down and get a professional's opinion about what's really going on with this O-Block indictment.
It's huge.
It is huge. It is huge. I was surprised. A lot of murders don't get solved in Chicago. The way it happened, it kind of seemed like this one was a little different because of where it happened and everything, but it was surprising, to say the least. So I thought, we'd start off by going through the indictment a little bit.
Sure.
It's kind of vague in there, so, I was thinking maybe you can explain why it's so vague and everything for us.
Well, indictments generally don't spell out a lot of facts. They basically just, show what the crime is and who committed it. So, and in this case, there are 7 counts. The chief count among them is the first one, and it's charged out in a RICO, and that's the Corrupt Organizations Act, created back in the 30s to combat the mob. So essentially what they're saying is that this O-Block gang is acting as an organization for a criminal purpose.
Okay, wouldn't that be any gang, though?
Well, one could argue that it's too broad, for sure. But I mean, if you and I, and let's say my son Michael, let's say the 3 of us get together, and we call ourselves the White Boys, and we're off, and our whole purpose is to commit crimes, drugs and murders, which is what they're accused of here. Well, then it fits within that statute. The organization has to be designed for a criminal purpose, not for some other purpose. So, like I'm in a motorcycle club called Street Legal. It's a bunch of lawyers. Yeah, we're a group. We're organized, but we're not organized for a criminal purpose.
So anything organized for a criminal purpose can be charged under the RICO.
Correct. Yes. Right. It has to fit within the definition of an organization. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In one of the press conferences, they said they were able to establish evidence that there was a racketeering enterprise involved, and this murder was done to further that.
Correct. And let me tell you this: it's not done without snitches.
Okay, we can get into all that a little bit later. So 5 people are being charged. I think everybody knows their names. I mean, we don't got to read them off. They list crimes that O-Block is accused of doing, which I believe, from what you was telling me right now, kind of ties into the RICO. So they're accused of 7 different counts.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the indictment, I don't see any evidence.
Well, you don't have to spell out what the evidence is. So because this is charged by indictment. Okay, so that means they went before a grand jury and they present the evidence to the grand jury. And then the grand jury decides whether there's probable cause or not. And in this case, they said there was probable cause. So then all they do is just list out what the charges are. And there's some allegations in here with some facts, but they're very general in nature. And that's how most indictments are, if not all of them.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, the government's not going to give anything up that they don't have to until they absolutely have to. So in many aspects, you don't even have to give your witness statements, called Jenks material, until 3 days before trial. And the rule used to be that you didn't have to give it until just before cross-examination.
So a witness statement, those would be people that are snitching.
Well, people, anybody that's given any information about the case that they intend to call as a witness.
Gotcha.
It's trial by ambush.
Wow. And they don't have to legally give that up till 3 days before the trial starts.
Right. And so the general practice for each individual U.S. attorney is different. I guarantee you, on a case like this, they're not going to divulge who their snitches are until the very, 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 very last minute. Because look what happened to FBG Duck. He was gunned down in the middle of the street, in broad daylight. So, and because it's such a high profile, because it's such a gang case, anybody that would be cooperating is going to be a target for sure.
Okay. Now there is one piece of evidence that they've released, and that is a dude by the name of Los. A week before the murder, he bought a car, and then right after the murder, he returned the car. About 45 minutes after the murder. And they say they have video of the car in the area where the murder took place, and I guess they got a picture of him at the dealership or something like that. Have you seen that?
That I'm not aware of, but it seems to me that he's trying to use that as kind of a cover. In other words, you drive around in that car, it's not going to be registered to the person who's driving it at that particular point because it's too soon, right? And so, I don't want the car, and you ditch it, and then so it goes back. But it's not going to be that hard to track that down. I mean, the problem that we have in today's society about getting away with a crime is there's fucking cameras everywhere, just everywhere. And so you capture a license plate or whatever, and everything's got a digital footprint, you know. You get a license plate number, you got this. You can track where everything goes, regardless of what it is, and whether it's a purchase at a store or whether it's a car. And so it's not surprising that they came up with this evidence.
His lawyer is trying to argue that there's no proof he was at the place of the murder or that he was around this car that much. Is that any type of good argument?
That's his only argument. The problem is that he returned the car. If he just let somebody borrow the car, and then pop, and then they gave it back to him, and then he still owned the car, he'd have a better argument. But it looks like a straw purchase kind of thing, where you're just using it for this transaction and then returning it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or at least that's going to be the government's argument on that. And then just to further that scenario, if he in fact did that, knowing what its intended purpose was, he's on the hook for the conspiracy just like everybody else, and he could be looking at life.
Oh, you mean even if he wasn't directly involved in it?
No. A conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime and then an overt act in furtherance of that. Okay? So if I say I'm going to go kill so-and-so and I need your car to do it, and I know that what you're going to be doing, I'm part of the conspiracy. And me giving you the car, the conspiracy is now completed whether you kill that guy or not.
I see. Okay. I've been told it's very hard to get a conviction, especially for murder, without good evidence like a murder weapon, DNA, video. They don't look like they have any of that type of evidence because they said they wore a mask, so they don't have, you know what I'm saying? They don't have that. As far as we know, none of the five are cooperating. So it just seems like it's going to be hard to make the case.
Well, here's the thing. You don't know what you don't know. Right?
Right.
We don't have access to the government's file. So my guess is this happened, a little over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
August 2020. So my guess is this happened. Whoever did it took off. I wouldn't be surprised if they talked about it with some people, and then maybe somebody got pinched, and now they're cooperating against them. That I bet you they have some of that information. So they've got some cooperators somewhere. We just don't know exactly what it is yet. And then you've got I bet there probably is some video somewhere. There's got to be some. This happened outside of a Dolce & Gabbana store, right? In a kind of a high fashion area. So if that's the case, I guarantee you there's some footage of what happened. And in fact, that's how they got this car to begin with.
Right, but what I meant was they had masks on.
Correct.
So there's video of the murder, but you can't really see who's doing what.
Right. So but they have to identify him somehow, right?
Right.
So how would they do that?
The only way I could think of is a snitch.
That's right.
Right? Okay. So that's kind of where I was kind of going to get to that. How does something like this turn from just a regular case that the police are investigating, because it really seems like some normal gang violence, and now it becomes federal?
Well, I think one of the things you've got, all these prosecutions, no matter whether they're local or federal, are all political, right? The district attorney is an elected person. The U.S. attorney is an appointed person, but they're still political offices. And you've got a situation in Chicago right now where there's murder after murder after murder happening, and it doesn't strike me odd. In fact, I know there's this investigation and a much broader investigation about guns and shipping them up from Atlanta. It's and it's it goes across state lines. This whole gang thing is, especially in the O Block, and is a matter of federal concern. So the feds have stepped in, and they've got all kinds of investigations going on.
Do you think there will be more indictments to come?
I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, quite frankly.
Okay. Because they did say in a press conference, they said that the investigation is ongoing with O Block and other gangs in the part of that city.
Yeah, I have and I know a little bit about this because I've got a colleague that's in Chicago, and he and I team up on cases from time to time. And we both know that there is an ongoing investigation on gangs in Chicago by the feds, tying them to other cities. And so, these are not little sentences. These guys are all looking at life without parole in a maximum federal facility. So this is sent to do two things. One, to get whoever did this, but number two, to send a large message to the outlying public and to the gangs themselves that it won't be tolerated, and the federal government's on their ass.
Do you think the feds getting involved had anything to do with where the murder happened at?
No.
No.
I don't think so. I think it was, it just happened to happen there. You mean like they got involved because it's this affluent area or something?
Yeah, I mean, it happened, in a really rich area. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I would hope not. I would hope that something that happens on, 63rd would get just as much of attention as something that happens on the Gold Coast. But, I can't answer that. I would hope not. But I think it's a much larger effort on the part of the federal government to curb this crap that's going on in Chicago.
Okay, we touched on the grand jury a little bit. Can you describe a grand jury for me again and how it kind of works?
Sure. I've never seen a grand jury because as a lawyer, I'm not allowed into the grand jury room. So basically what a grand jury is, it's a charging body. Okay? So the federal government gets a case in, and the Constitution requires that to be charged with a crime, you have to be charged by grand jury. Or you can be charged by complaint initially, but they eventually have to indict you. You can always waive your right to be indicted. But so a grand jury is made up of 18 to 23 people. They serve 6-month to 18-month terms, depending upon what they're investigating. There's only a prosecutor and the witnesses, and the grand jurors themselves get to ask questions. And their only issue, or the only mandate that they have, is once all the evidence is in. And there's no cross-examination by a defense lawyer either. So it's basically one side, and you've heard the old phrase, you can indict a ham sandwich. So you put all this information in front of the grand jury, and they have to decide whether there's probable cause to issue an indictment. Probable cause means it's just more likely true than not true that a crime was committed, and that the person that they're alleging committed it actually committed that crime. So it's our lowest standard. It's just like slightly more true than not true. 50.01% basically. It's our lowest standard.
Okay, so they put the grand jury together. The grand jury votes to indict him?
Correct.
Now, does it have to be a full, all 18 people have to vote for it?
That's a good question. I think it just has to be a majority, but usually they're unanimous.
Gotcha. Okay, so they vote, and then from there, that's when they construct the indictment?
Correct. The prosecutor's got it already written up. And if you look at the back page of it, this is not even, this copy that I have isn't signed, but it's usually signed by the foreperson and the United States attorney.
Okay. When they eventually get to trial, will they be tried together or will they be tried separately?
Well, that's a good question. If I'm a defense lawyer, I'd want to sever my ties with the other ones. And, it depends upon, they're going to be tried together. I mean, let's just call, there's just, I can't imagine them not being tried together. It's all the same act or occurrence. The only way that there's an issue is if, let's say, one of them gave a statement, okay? You can use that statement against themselselves. So if I go in, I get arrested, and I give the cops a statement, that statement can be used against me. But if my son and I get arrested, and I give a statement, but he doesn't, that statement can't be used in a trial against him. It's called it's USA versus Bruton. So, and why is that? Because a statement that I give is a statement of a party opponent. In other words, you got the government and me. I made the statement against myself. But you can't use it in his trial because it'd be hearsay. So if any one of the co-defendants in this case gave a statement, that would pose some problems for a joint trial. My guess is that none of them gave a statement. Because if there was an admission, you'd probably see it in the indictment.
Okay. Will they get bail?
No. 100% no.
Okay, just because of the crime and what they're being accused of?
Yeah, well, it's a homicide and they're looking at life. And now, I was wrong in NBA Youngboy when he got released. But this isn't like that case. This is so much more serious.
I mean, because I have seen people get bail for murder before.
Not in the feds, you haven't.
Not in the feds. Okay, so there's a big difference between the regular police and the feds.
Yeah, absolutely. A federal judge is not going to take a chance on these guys.
Okay.
So when you have a case like this in federal court, there's a presumption that they're detained. And so, which means the judge has to detain them. So unless the defense has a bond hearing and overcomes that presumption with a condition or set of conditions that would secure their release and protect the public. And this is a homicide with guns and everything. There's just, I can't imagine a federal judge releasing them.
Okay. Could any of them be cooperating and we not know it?
Yes.
And so nobody would know?
Right.
Just the FBI and everybody. None of the other people would know.
Right. And even their own defense lawyers wouldn't know until the last minute.
Even their own defense lawyers wouldn't know. Wow.
No. I mean, the defense lawyer of the cooperator would know it, but the other defense lawyers would not know it. And there should be a separation order because these guys are going to be in custody. There should be a separation order keeping all five of them apart.
I see. What would be a credible witness for this type of crime?
Well, somebody that doesn't have an axe to grind. They don't have any dog in the fight. Somebody who probably doesn't have a record. Somebody that doesn't have anything to gain by their testimony. But one of the flip sides about cooperators, you can say, you're hoping to get a reduced sentence for this, right? And blah, blah, blah. Well, the other flip side of that is, what happens if you lie? Well, if you lie, all bets are off and you don't get any benefit of the bargain. So, somebody who's eyewitness, although eyewitness testimony is proven pretty unreliable, somebody who saw them right afterwards and they say, holy fuck, we killed FBG. Yeah, I guarantee you there's people out there that have an admission from these guys that will testify in this case. I guarantee you. I'd be shocked if that wasn't the case.
There's a lot of rumors of like this person or that person, but for it to be a witness, it would have to be somebody that has direct knowledge of it, right? Like it couldn't just be, one of the dudes just happened to tell somebody weeks later, yeah, I did this. Would that be something that could be brought up in court?
For sure. Absolutely.
Wouldn't it be hard to prove though?
Well, here's the thing. People a lot of times say, oh, they don't have any evidence. but they've got people who are willing to testify. Testimony is evidence. So it'll just be whether or not what the person is saying is credible. And there might be things to back it up. Maybe there's a text message. Maybe there is, we went to El Toro's and we ate burritos, and here's a selfie with me and so-and-so on that particular day, and this is when that happened. Or phone records. There's something else to back up what the person is saying, and generally there's a digital footprint, like I said, of everybody and everything we do nowadays. I guarantee you the feds are patient as hell. Remember, it's been a year since this happened, and my guess is that they've got it buttoned up, pretty good. They have a pretty good success rate.
Yes, I've seen that. 96%, right? Great.
That's about right, yeah.
So you believe that somebody's cooperating and it's probably somebody really close to the situation?
I would suspect. I mean, I don't know for sure. This is just total speculation on my part. But I just know how these cases are put together. And they're always put together with snitches, with cooperators, with somebody that, and with somebody that they're going to lean on. And the federal government can lean pretty fucking hard on some of these people.
Okay, right. So it's probably somebody that's looking at a lot of time, maybe?
Or they...
I mean, because why else would they cooperate, right? I mean...
Right, exactly.
Okay. When do you think they'll start bringing out more evidence?
As they're going to have a detention hearing, if they haven't had it already. And once they have their detention hearing, I would bet, about 6 or 8 months from now, we'll learn more information. And if there's anything that's exculpatory, we'll hear that too. We'll hear that from their defense lawyers. They'll be squawking like, but it all depends. So, I mean, I'd say in about 6 to 8 months, we'll get some more facts. Exculpatory means information that tends to lead towards innocence. So, or favorable information for the defense. To exculpate is to relieve yourself of the guilt, basically, that you're not guilty of something. So, exculpatory evidence in a murder case would be, here's a picture of me in Detroit at the exact same time that this happened, so I couldn't have done it.
And if the prosecutor doesn't turn over all exculpatory evidence, that would mean they would lose the case.
Yeah, that's prosecutorial misconduct. That would be a Brady violation. And that can be grounds for tossing the case out too.
Okay. Do we know what kind of lawyers they have? Have they gotten good lawyers yet, or are they on public defenders?
Well, wait a second. What did you just made a distinguishing remark between good lawyers and public defenders. First of all, in the feds, they're all good lawyers. The federal defender's office here is like a high-class law firm. They are really good lawyers. But here's what happens. If these guys don't have money, and I don't know if they do have money or not, and I haven't really looked into who their representation is, but if they don't have a whole lot of dough, they'll be assigned a public defender, one will, and then the rest of them will all have conflicts lawyers. So they'll have a lawyer that's probably well-seasoned, and they won't have to pay for it, but it'll be a private lawyer that's on a conflicts panel. It's called a CJA panel.
Okay, so are you familiar with Crowned TV?
Yes.
So I was watching some of their videos to learn about this case a little bit. And this goes back to the snitching thing. They mentioned a confidential source is mentioned in the indictment or somewhere in it. And they were saying that type of person is more of a law-abiding citizen.
How would they know that?
Well, they said there was a difference between a confidential source and an informant.
Right. That's true. There's a confidential, reliable source. That's somebody who's given snitching in the past, basically given reliable information. There's a confidential source. That's just somebody who's just giving information. And then there's an arrested informant. So that's kind of on the order of reliability. Somebody who's given reliable information in the past, somebody who's just a concerned citizen, without any axe to grind. Maybe that's a confidential source, maybe not. And then you've got an arrested informant. That's somebody who's been arrested, who hasn't given good information in the past, but who may or may not be credible. So that's kind of the order in which they're kind of... and yeah, I can see how somebody would say that.
Now, there's been misinformation. People have accused people of cooperating, but from what I understand, they all signed what's called a protective order. Can you explain what that is?
Who signed a protective order?
Supposedly all of them.
Well, I know exactly what that is. So when you have a case like this, especially when it's high profile, the government wants all the defense lawyers to sign a thing saying that they can't show their clients certain information. Which I think is bullshit, to be quite frank with you. I should be able to show my client whatever. But they don't want, you can show it to them, but you can't let them have their discovery. So that's really what it is. It's so that you can show them the information, but you can't let them have their physical discovery. And there's certain things you cannot share with your client. And usually that has to do with snitch testimony. So if the lawyer knows who the snitch is, he's not supposed to tell the client who that person is. Which I think runs afoul of a fair defense.
Wow, man, that is...
That's the feds.
That's crazy. Now, why would they sign this?
Because in order to get the discovery, they can't get it without it.
What would happen if they just said, you know what, we're not signing this? Then they wouldn't get any information.
Then they'd wind up before a federal judge, and the federal judge would say, you either sign it or I'm taking you off the case.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It's done all the time, and it goes so against my grain, it's ridiculous. I've done that many times.
There's been a lot of talk about them potentially getting the death penalty.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Well, I am 100% against the death penalty to begin with. Regardless, I don't think government-sponsored killing helps anybody. But it is a definite, it's actually a, what do you call it, a settlement tool, really. Because it's like, all right, if he pleads, we'll take death off the table. But they could be looking at the death penalty.
I was watching Crown TV, and they said that they normally don't pursue the death penalty in cases like this in Illinois.
Well, go ahead.
But it's up to the Attorney General. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have to go to DOJ, like in Washington, D.C., to get permission to do that.
And how soon will we know if they're going for the death penalty or not?
As the case progresses, probably in the next few months.
Okay, so this will come out soon then.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Okay. There's also been this rumor about this guy named Zell. He's from O Block, and he committed suicide a couple months ago. People are speculating that he might have snitched. And then that could have been the reason why he committed suicide, because he couldn't take the pressure of the murder and he couldn't take the pressure of the snitching.
I think that's an astute observation. Or he felt the noose coming around his neck and didn't want to deal with it. I mean, suicide's a very difficult thing to kind of put a finger on. But nobody will know if he cooperated, because they can't use anything he said in court.
That's where I was going to go with it. Now that he's passed away, it wouldn't even matter what he told them, right?
Well, it matters in the sense that they got information to pursue an investigation. But it doesn't matter in terms of a trial, because they won't be able to use that at any point because it would be hearsay.
Gotcha. Would they be able to play tapes in court of him?
No.
No. Okay. Now, he's not listed in the paperwork.
Nope.
If he was part of it, would they have listed him in the paperwork?
I doubt it. You don't see any names listed in the paperwork except for the names of the defendants.
Right, but because he's not here, they wouldn't have put him in there?
No.
Okay. Now, there was a Boss Top interview, which has been the biggest thing that the internet has been saying that has caused them to get indicted. He's getting all the blame for it, and there's this video where he's asked about FBG Duck, and his response was, "Don't say shit about Troy."
Okay.
That was his response. And so, is that anything?
I don't think so. That's all he said?
That's all he says.
That ain't enough.
Okay, I didn't think it would be either, but the internet has been going crazy with these rumors.
You know the rumor mill. It churns and churns and churns, and people like to speculate, and people say all kinds of shit that isn't true, and the truth will come out, and that's why I try to be super careful about what I say on my channel and just in general. I don't like to have shit jammed up my ass. Whether you're arguing in court and go off half-cocked. I had a lawyer say all this crap about my client during a hearing, and he had nothing to back it up. And I said, it is time for Mr. Duffy to put up or shut up. And I kind of got in his face. And guess what? He shut up. I don't want to be in that position where I have to shut up. And so that whole rumor mill... is what it is. I dismiss it. I want to know facts. Give me real facts, not just what somebody's just spouting off about.
How much of this stuff on the internet do you think will be used in the trial? The self-snitching.
I don't know how much of this is on the internet on this particular case. Anytime they have these social media posts, though, you know what? They're gonna put some of that in because that's in the indictment. So I would bet in order to prove the organization, in order to prove the RICO part of it, and they make allegations about social media and posts and stuff like that, I bet you're going to have guns on their social media posts with guns, social media posts with cash, and probably with gang signs and clothing. I bet you there's quite a bit of it now that I think about it.
In a Vlad TV interview, Boosie, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but
sure.
At one point he was facing murder. He was on trial for murder.
Right.
And during his trial, he said they spent 2 days playing his music. And they had the police up there breaking down the slang for the jury. Is that something that you could see happening in this case?
Yeah, for sure, because you got a couple of things that are going on. If they have any intercepted communications, or like whether it's from the jailhouse or just wire taps, and they're talking about this and that. They're talking about a BZ. They're talking about this and that, a zip, or whatever they're talking about. It's probably not generally known to the average person what they're talking about. So somebody will have to decode the language, and that's usually in the form of a gang expert. About smoking a blunt or smoking wets or whatever.
Either way, even if it's good or not good, they're going to throw it in there anyway.
I think they're going to try to use some of that for sure.
Okay. Now, there's also been a lot of speculation about King Von being involved. I take it this would be like similar to Zell, where he wouldn't be in the indictment either.
Well, when did King Von die?
Last November. So a few months
after
this.
Well, whether he was or not, I mean, at this point, it's just that the question is whether these guys. I mean, if King Von was involved, it doesn't necessarily take these guys off the hook.
Right. Would he be brought up in the trial? Would he be able to be brought up in the trial?
Well, nothing he said could be brought up in the trial. Or at least I don't think so. that's a pretty vague concept. So I'd have to know more context. But if they said no, it wasn't me, it was King Von that did this, then if that was the defense, that's the defense. But I can't imagine King Von playing a big part in this trial.
Are you familiar with Little Dirk's case out in Atlanta, where him and King Von were accused of shooting somebody outside of a nightclub?
Yes.
Okay, a lot of people are suspicious of Dirk because he's out on bond, and just, I don't know, a couple months ago, there was an attempted home invasion at his house, and supposedly him and his girlfriend shot back at the people who tried to home invade, and they're saying that, he couldn't be around guns. So how come he's not in jail? That's what they're saying.
That's a good question. I mean, he's not charged with a crime related to those guns, right?
As far as I know, right.
But does he have a felony record?
I'm not sure, but he's out on bond.
Yeah, I think he's a prohibited person, so that still may come. When did that happen? That wasn't that long ago.
I want to say like 2-3 months ago.
Yeah. That might still be in the works. We don't know. But you would think if there was a real issue with it, they would have yanked his ass back into custody. But if he's more of a victim, they may overlook it.
That's what I was thinking too, that Georgia's pro-gun, and so maybe because he was the victim of it, that they kind of just said, okay, we're going to let this slide because he was really just protecting himself?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it very well could be that, but I just don't know. So the next phase of this, just to give the phases of the criminal process. So they'll have the detention hearing. Whether or not they'll be detained will be a matter for the magistrate. If the defendants don't like the decision from the magistrate, they can appeal it to the district court judge. Because in the federal system, you have a district court judge and a magistrate. The magistrate hears all the pretrial stuff, and it's kind of like a buddy judge to the district court judge. And the district court judge does all the finality stuff, like the trials, pleas, sentencing, that kind of stuff. And so then there will be a motions hearing to probably suppress evidence if they need to suppress evidence. Then there will be, they'll set it on for trial, and then you'll have a trial. Trial probably won't happen for a year, I bet, in this case.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty normal, though, right, for a murder case?
For a homicide. And people always talk about, violation of your speedy trial rights. No defense lawyer wants their client to have a speedy trial, period. They just don't want it. And the reason why is because I want as much time as possible to prepare. The government, how long has the government taken? They've taken, 13 months, 14 months, 15 months to bring this case to court. Well, I need time to look into the case just like the government did.
How often does the government wait till right before the trial to tell who the witnesses are?
In this case, 100%. They're going to do it in this case. They're not going to release anything until they absolutely have to. And they're sneaky, and they're not to be trusted. It really varies, though. I've had prosecutors who want to settle cases and give me everything right up front and say, your guy's kind of fucked. Other clients will say, okay, I've got some hot docs for you. Here, I'm just going to give you the highlights. And other ones just say, I'm not giving you anything. Just take my word for it until they have to. Which makes settling a case problematic because then your client thinks, oh, they don't have shit on me. They would have given you this information if they had it. And then you've got people with, no information making big decisions on their life. And it makes it very difficult.
So you think they would try to negotiate a deal without even showing them any evidence?
I think they'll show them some. They'll say, we have this. This is how we know. This is how we know. And sometimes you can take your client in for what they call a reverse proffer. So you bring your client in, your client doesn't say anything, and the government just showcases what they have. They don't give you any documents, but they show you, here, we have this document, we have this document, we have this statement, we have this video, we have this. And then you kind of sees what their case is all about.
Are they allowed to lie during that?
No, they don't. I mean, a good prosecutor doesn't need to lie.
Okay. I just asked that because, I've seen when cops are questioning people that they're allowed to lie. That's why.
Well, cops do it all the time, but prosecutors generally don't do it. I've seen prosecutors get sneaky with things here and there, but by and large, they're pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Because you know why? Because they know a guy like me, if you fucking lie to me, I'm going to jam that shit up your ass.
Okay, so if they were to lie, you could bring it up during the trial.
Right.
I gotcha. Okay. Is there anything else in the terms of people cooperating that we could add to this?
Just watch for the ducks to fly out of the pond, because I bet you see a couple of these guys cop deals if they can.
Oh, so who are you referring to when you say these guys?
I'm talking about in this FBG duck case.
So you think a couple of these guys will try to take a deal?
I think they're all trying to take a deal, but whether one or more of them snitch is another deal altogether. And here's the thing: there's a thing called 5K1. A 5K1 is a departure based upon rendering substantial assistance to the government. And what that means is if the government is aided by your words, in other words, if they get a conviction, then they use that to talk to the judge later to reduce your sentence.
And whoever snitches first is going to get the best deal.
That's right. Exactly. First one to the table.
First one to the table.
And then when he goes to prison, show me your fucking papers. Right.
Because he's still going to get a good sentence. The rest of them will get life.
Well, they're still going to get 20, 30 years. And we're going to give you an option to get out of prison before you start drooling. But the stakes are high in this one, very, very high. So you're not going to see any slacking lawyers on this case. You're not going to see a DWI lawyer on this case.
So this is going to be like the best of the best on all sides.
I think so, yeah. I think you're gonna find good lawyers on this case. I don't really know that much about the Tupac homicide. They never got anybody on that case, did they?
So with the Tupac situation back in, I think, 2005, they had to do a big investigation because the city was being sued. Because they believed that dirty cops were involved in the killing of Biggie Smalls. So during the investigation, they actually found the people who killed Tupac. They got one guy hemmed up. He was selling heroin, Keefy D. And, basically they got him on a life sentence unless he cooperated. So they put him on a proffer deal. So whatever he told them that day could never be used against him.
Yeah, let me stop you right there and tell you what a proffer is. So let's say you've got a client who is a snitch and wants to go into the U.S. Attorney's office and cooperate to get a lower sentence. When you go in there, you could admit to anything except for a homicide, basically, and they can't use anything against you in that proffer session unless you lie. And then if you lie and then you try to say something different on the stand, they can jam that up your ass.
Basically, during this proffer session, he tells the investigators that he was in the car when his nephew shot Tupac. Years later, one of the detectives, he recorded this. And he puts a book out and he makes, like a documentary about it. Basically telling, how Tupac and Biggie were killed. Well, Keefy D has been doing interviews. I've interviewed Keefy D. And he talks about, I can't remember exactly how in detail we got into it in our interview, but he wrote a book about it where he talks about it in detail. And there's still no charges.
So Keefy D, his cousin was the one who shot Tupac. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Is he an artist?
No. Orlando Anderson, no. He wasn't a rapper or nothing.
Keefy D, I mean.
Nope.
Okay. And there's been no charges against his cousin.
Orlando Anderson died. He died in a couple years after Tupac.
Oh, then they can't charge him.
Right. Keefy D, though. Keefe D was
Yeah,
in
but
the car.
did Keefe D say he had something to do with it?
He was in the car.
So what? Mere presence alone is not enough. And there's also a doctrine called corpus delicti. You cannot be convicted on your own word alone without any corroboration.
That actually makes a lot of sense because everybody else that was in the car that night is dead. There's 4 people in the car. He's the only person still living.
So what you have so far is just mere presence. I was there when this happened and not participating necessarily. I bet he's not inculpating himself. Inculpation is the exact opposite of exculpation. So he's not, making himself seem guilty. He was just there. And there's nobody there to corroborate what he's saying. So it may be true, maybe not be true. But that is what it is.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. What do you think about the Little Tim situation?
Little Tim, that's going to be a situation where he's going to probably claim self-defense, and he might win on that. That was a situation where there's where you can probably expect other gang members to have a gun. So he was on King Von's side, right? Or no, on the other side. He was on the other side.
He was on the other side.
Right. And so they're all beefing with each other, and I've seen the video. And I think cops were firing into the crowd at that point too, weren't they?
At one point, I believe the police shot 2 other people. I don't know. Little Tim got shot himself. I'm not sure who shot him, though. I'm not sure we know for a fact who shot Little Tim.
All I got to say is he might have a shot.
So that's what I'd seen, too, The only thing I was kind of wondering about is, Vaughn was just beating up Quando Rondo.
Yeah.
It didn't really, is it reasonable to say his life was in danger?
Well, it's one thing. We don't know what was said between the parties right then and there. And it seems like something was brewing, and it just all of a sudden got physical, and it got crazy all of a sudden. And so it's just gonna come down to one thing and one thing only: who started it, and whether what Little Tim did was reasonable. Those are the 2 questions that need to be asked or answered.
And that'll be up to the jury to decide that?
Well, here's the problem. If he doesn't get a self-defense instruction, he's kind of hosed. So he'll need to get an instruction that if you find that the defendant was acting in self-defense, he's not guilty of a crime, that kind of thing. And if they don't get that instruction, then what's his defense? Then he doesn't have one.
And that would be something I take it his lawyers would be fighting for?
For sure, yeah. Self-defense or defense of others.
Okay.
And generally, self-defense is presumed. In other words, the government has to prove that the person did not act in self-defense. So they have to prove a negative.
So that makes it look really good on his side then.
If he gets a self-defense instruction. If you find out that, they had a motions hearing and the defense will not be getting the self-defense instruction, you can expect a plea to something quickly, I would bet.
Okay, so it wouldn't even go to trial.
Without the self-defense instruction, there is no defense. Unless it's an accidental discharge of the firearm, which totally is not in accordance with what the facts are.
What do you think about the feds targeting a lot of rappers?
Well, there's so much violence going on. There's so much beefing going on that it seemed like almost inevitable. But I'll tell you what the feds like to do sometimes. They like the low-hanging fruit. And in other words, they like to take cases that are easy pickings. And some of these cases are really easy pickings. Like, when they're on social media, like NBA Youngboy, where he's got videos of him with guns. I mean, is that really a federal issue? Kinda, not really. It's, it is just a, you get the publicity of songs and bragging about smoking on dead ops. I mean, is that that's where they're going with this, and they put all this stuff on social media, and so the feds like to get that low, like boost their numbers, low hanging fruit. You don't see them going after Wall Street like they go after the gang streets.
Wow. I can't really wrap my head around why so many rappers are being targeted by the feds when it just seems like normal cop gang activity.
Yeah, but it's the cause du jour, right? It's what's sexy. It's what sells right now. It's what's political. It's what's hot. Why do you think I'm doing a channel on it? Because we've got 400,000 subscribers since February, and that is just, it's sexy right now. It just happens to be what I do for a living. But, years ago it was mortgage fraud. When they were handing out money like nobody's business, and these banks were completely complicit in that. You had realtors, brokers, loan officers, all doing all this mortgage fraud. Did you see anybody at the fucking top go down on that mortgage fraud stuff? Hardly at all. Hardly at all. It was all these lower guys, that's and it was all fed. So today it's just the cause du jour, and they're going after the easy pickings.
Wow. So if you're a rapper, keep it clean, man.
Keep the shit off the internet. Stop self-snitching.
I've been saying in my interviews, they're coming, man. This seems like rappers are just the number one target. They want rappers right now, and they want to do whatever they can to get them. Well, man, this was really informative. A really dope interview.
Well, it was great to meet you.
You too.
Well, we'll hook next time we're out in LA, because we went out to LA and did Adam No Jumper interview. When we come out there again, we'll hook up, and I'll buy you a steak.
Man, that sounds good. I'm with that 100%, man.
All right, good to talk to you.
Definitely, man. It was good to talk to you, man. I appreciate you.
All right, see you later.
All right, bro. Later. What's up? This is Cam Capone. We got more content like this coming soon, so hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in to Cam Capone News.